Good evening to our audience, both our viewer audience and our live audience. I'm delighted to welcome you to a conversation about what's going on in San Diego. The New York Times is fascinated, Time magazine is fascinated, I'm fascinated. And we decided at the university that there's one person in this community who probably knows more about what's really going on than any of us, and that's Neil Morgan. Neil Morgan is the Dean of Journalism in San Diego. He's been working here for 54 years. He's the author of 11 books about California and San Diego, and is now the founding editor of a very innovative, not-for-profit, web-based news service here in San Diego called voiceofsandiego.org. And he said I had to say .org because the web junkies need to find it. I'm Mary Walshok. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor at UCSD and been very involved with UCSD TV from its beginning. And I'm really pleased that you're going to spend some time in conversation about what's going on here. Now, for the sake of our viewers, many of whom don't live in San Diego, I've got to set this up. Because in case you missed it, in the last 3 weeks, we've had a congressman under federal investigation for his ties to a defense contractor. 2 of our city councilmen have been convicted.
Of felonies.
Of felonies, right. We've got a ballooning pension scandal. And just 2 days ago, right, we had a primary election to complete the term of Dick Murphy, who resigned after Time magazine said he was one of the 3 worst mayors in the United States. How did we get into this mess?
By having our backs turned, by all being very comfortable, having a good time, and expecting city government to run itself. It happens all over the world, but I think in Southern California we are still a little worse, more careless in that regard. There are hundreds of opportunities over the last several years when we could have stopped this. The media could have helped stop it. The voters could have helped stop it.
Well, I'm going to probe you on that, because the other thing that I know is true is this isn't the first time this has happened in San Diego, right? We've had a long history of these sorts of public scandals and turnover, unexpected turnover in public officials. And has the media been inattentive throughout our history, or are things getting worse? What's going on here?
One is brought up to believe what everyone tells us, that San Diego has never had big-time corruption. We've had a lot of lesser-time corruption. The problem is that we like to listen to the first part and not the second. This government should be ashamed of itself, no doubt about that. But I think it is also a great warning to the people of a nice laid-back community to get off their butts and go to work helping the city.
When I called you 4 months ago and said, Neil, wouldn't it be nice to do a conversation, a public forum, to try to shed a little light on what's going on in the city, not anticipating any of these developments, by the way, you said to me, you know, Mary, I think I'd like to do that, and I'd like you to call it Onward to Where. And I think you should share with our audience the explanation you gave to me, because I think it is relevant to where we are today.
One of the many efforts to control corruption without really wanting to control corruption that we have had in San Diego occurred in the 50s, when C. Arnold Smith was known to be sort of the lead boss in town. Jim Copley was part of that cabal. John Alicio, the Caliente racetrack man. We had Andy Borthwick, the banker, Graydon Hoffman, the banker, but these 5 guys together really made most of the decisions and
old boys,
elected most of the city council. Well, in fact, I think we were better off then. that's another problem. But what we learned then was that these guys got together and decided what was going to happen. I think they were stirred once to accept the idea that there should be some reform and there should be a group going for it. And so a citizens reform group was formed, and several of us were asked to nominate members. And in an insane moment, I suggested that Dr. Seuss, our neighbor and friend, Ted Geisel, would be a marvelous member of this reform committee. And he was very devoted to it. You know, he had a nice liberal background back in his PM days, and he was doing all the right things. But he came back from a meeting one afternoon and came by my house and banged on the door, and I've never seen him so mad. And he said, they have voted on a motion by Arnold Smith that all the problems are solved in San Diego, and they have disbanded our organization. And we've just got started. And so there is no more reform. And he was so angry because there was a whole long list of needed things that he had presented and others had. But it was getting serious enough that the boys put the palm down on it. But he went home, and later that evening brought us back the sketch, which hangs on our office wall, of a very sort of strange body of a politician on a marble platform in a park, and he's teetering over, about to fall on his head. And the caption says, "Onward to where?"
Okay.
And I have never been able to answer that question in San Diego.
But what you're implying is that maybe special interest groups don't really want solutions to problems? Is that what you think that apocryphal story tells us?
I think maybe the problems that we regard as problems are not problems to those people.
Uh-huh.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's a funny part.
But how does a community, right, build a sense of shared problems?
Well, we have to, if we can't do it now, we'll never do it, because everybody is shaken by the extent of this corruption.
Yeah.
In San Diego, we continue to be amazed that we are not a nice, sweet, easygoing city. We all laugh at Tammany stories and all of the rest of them from the past big cities, but boy, we had it just as good as any of them had it this time. And so I think this is a lovely moment for people of any city, and fortunately it happens to be San Diego, to stand up and say, what do we do now? And if they ask that question often enough of enough people, they're going to get some very good answers, and they may have to go to work.
But how do they begin to get their arms around the problems?
Community meetings.
Okay.
One woman, one man gets on a telephone and calls a dozen friends. They call more. It's happened in cities after cities. Mm-hmm. There are great short histories of cities where there have been successful reform movements. St. Louis, Chicago, Denver, Phoenix, Indianapolis, Portland. It has happened. And it has happened only when people have grown concerned enough to begin to take responsibility, which starts with a phone call. And hey, come by, let's get a few people in and have tea or coffee or something and talk. Enough of those little cells start, and enough communities that you finally have a group that can convene in some hall, and you find 300 or 400 people, and you say, hey, we might have something going here.
Why do you think this didn't happen sooner in San Diego? It hasn't happened yet, but it has the potential to happen now because of the crisis. But in a lot of other communities, it happened before there was a crisis.
We sit back and expect to get alarm signals before the fire starts. Mm-hmm. We expect the media to give us alarm signals. We have a pretty complacent media in general in this community. We have a newspaper, which I dearly love. I gave a lot of my years to it. But it is convinced of what the old founders said, that we don't have corruption here. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have corruption here, you're not going to be interested in having reporters who find it. Mm-hmm. It's not a conspiracy, it's just damn laziness.
So is one of your views that the challenges in a community like San Diego, and maybe some similar communities around the United States, is that if you don't have an informed citizenry because there's a media that informs them, they're going to turn their backs or not see or not engage? Is that what we should conclude from?
It's hard to complain. It's hard to organize. It's hard to believe that you can affect the world. It is hard to come out of our lethargy unless we are prodded, unless enough of us say to each other, hey, we might be able to fix this. This is a wonderful time.
I can't resist talking about Voice of San Diego.
Good.
Because, no, and this is not a commercial, but it fits very much with what you're saying, because where people go for their information is also changing. So one could say conventional media don't have an interest in really speaking, doing investigative reporting on what's truly going on in the community. But is it not the case that more and more people are getting their news and their information other places, such as the web?
Community web journalism is the biggest media story of the year. That's not a claim. That's established in many instances. New York Times and others are writing about it all the time. Communities have discovered that you can have infinite space on a website. It doesn't cost you a whole lot. You don't have to buy a printing press or a lot of newsprint. You can go into business. The Voice of San Diego has done that on a very small scale, but with a tremendous impact. And we are recognized now as among the top 10 or 12 community websites, news websites. We're a nonprofit, which makes us unique.
What I think is so interesting about what you're describing is that you're talking about democratizing media.
We have 200 correspondents.
Uh-huh.
And none of them get paid. We don't have any money. We don't pay ourselves, so they understand that. But there's a whole lot of people out there that have things to say, and all we need to do is to have enough time to go through their material and edit it to make sure that it's accurate and not libelous.
So if media sources such as Voice of San Diego start giving the public the in-depth reporting and the perspective on issues and access to information about vexing issues, and they're also organizing at the neighborhood level or the community level, you may get more civic involvement? Is that?
I think so. Our reporters are typically 23, 25, 27, 28 years old, and they believe intently that they're on the cutting edge of journalism now. And their devotion to pursuing it is something that reminds me of when we were all kids, but they've got hold of something now.
Well, you mentioned 20-somethings, and I'm the mother of a 20-something who did register to vote, but votes irregularly. Let's talk about the upcoming election, all right? We have two candidates for mayor who came out of the race, 11? We started with 11, and we're down to 2. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're both decent people, not career politicians. One is a kind of centrist, moderate Republican. The other, a populist Democrat. Isn't that a real choice? Do you think that's going to inspire lots of people to come out and vote because they believe the mayor is going to make a change?
I think we're going to have an unusually interesting general election in November. Donna Fry, I love that woman. She is our surfer lady, but she is solid in the head. She's good. She has a conviction, she has compassion, and she has the great ability to say no to the bad guys. She was the single vote against 8 on the council for the last 2 years and all of the corruptive measures that they passed. You've got to love her spunk. She is literally a surfer girl. She's a reformed alcoholic. She's married to a surfboard builder. She makes no pretense of being anything else, but by God, she's a gutty councilwoman. She will make an interesting candidate for mayor. Sanders is a former police chief, very good man, very solid man, has made the brilliant move of signing on Admiral Ronnie Froman, the woman, as his chief of staff in advance. I suppose now that Donna will have to hire Pat Shea as the economic advisor. I don't.
We should explain to everyone that who doesn't know.
Local jokes.
Local jokes. Pat Shea is a local attorney, right, who's been very vocal about the pension scandal and also was one of the candidates for mayor.
Pat Shea is particularly interesting to San Diego because he's the only one here who's been through it. He was an attorney involved in the Orange County bankruptcy 10 years ago. And so he knows a great deal more about it than any of those who are talking more about it.
Well, do you think that it's possible that people have underestimated, and I mean academics and business people and people who are usually considered in the know, have underestimated the power of the web and blogs and neighborhood groups when they look at a person like Donna Fry? Is she a product of this new media era? Do you see what I'm saying? And this new phenomenon that it's possible for people, both through television and on the web, to get a lot of information, a lot of impressions that are outside maybe what the mainstream thinks are the core issues or the core expectations of how a politician should behave.
Donna Fry came on 4 years ago, somewhat before the blog became as a commonplace an instrument of power as it is today. So she's not a creature of the blog, nor of course is the other one, but the blogs are perhaps the single most important influence in campaigning these days. I think that goes back to the Kerry Bush thing. We found out a whole lot about the effects of blogs. Right.
But it was very interesting that she ran in the official mayoral election last fall. I happened to be at Oxford University at that time, so I was getting all my news from San Diego on the web. And my friends around the university and in England were shocked that a surfer lady would get more votes than a Harvard business school or law school graduate, Dick Murphy. And I'm wondering, how do you explain that? What's going on in the mind of the voters? What's happening in San Diego? Are we la-la land, or is there something really fundamental that's going on here?
In retrospect, the voters may have sensed instinctively that Donna's more honest than Dick Murphy was. Mm-hmm. That would be a cruel thing to say, but I was at an election night party where the people who had handled Murphy through 3 campaigns were present, and we drank wine, and I said, "Do you know what happened to our mayor?" They said, "We don't. I wish we did." It's very poignant because the man collapsed and he could not make decisions. Donna Fry will make a decision. You may regret that she made it.
It's interesting, going back to the 20-somethings, when I probed my son about how he voted. He said, "I voted for everyone who wasn't a professional politician."
Well, there's a tremendous backlash in that generation, and in mine too.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have a very pretty gallery of active politicians now. You know, since Lionel Van Deerlen, our great congressman, things have been going downhill all the time.
Well, I can't resist. I don't want to go over old wounds, but you really do have a tremendous sense of history about this region. And Mike Davis, the historian and writer, not journalist, recently talked about the city of crooks, or, you know, America's, that we're a corrupt city, and that there's been a long history of that.
He's a wonderful writer. He's right. He's a great historian. He's a good friend. I admire him. He's a contributing voice to Voice of San Diego. He certainly looks at the other side of San Diego from what some of us choose to, but he's dead right. He's a great reporter.
But you have said to me, Mary, this time it's worse, right? This one's big, and it's worse. Let's not talk about C. Arnhold Smith or Roger Hedgecock or Valdo Martinez. I mean, talk a little bit about why you think this one is worse. And what why was it small corruption in the past and now it's big time?
The most poignant scene I cannot get through my mind in answer to your question is Mike Zucchett, who, when he came on to city council, tall, handsome, brilliant young man with a great career ahead of him. As I see it, Ralph Inzanza, who was a year or two ahead of him, who knew all the angles, took him under his wing, and they both were convicted eventually of felony corruption. They argued in court that everybody was doing it. I look at Mike now and I feel very sorry for him, because I think he really believed that everybody was doing it and it was okay, and Ralph said, you do it this way and you'll be okay. We have to have consciences. We have to respect people with consciences. It starts with honesty and consciousness, and you can't be a public servant unless people believe you have them.
And on the heels of that, right, we learned in the newspapers about our congressperson, Randy Duke Cunningham. And
he really splashed down big, didn't he?
Right.
Boy.
No, but I think it's not insignificant, the simultaneous way in which all of these things are emerging in the public eye. Talk a little bit about that one. What's his excuse? He's my age. He's not Mike Zucchett's age. What's his excuse?
Well, I would imagine he has the same attitude toward Congress. And I would defer again to Lionel Van Deerlen, but I believe he would argue that the rest of Congress is doing it this way, and this is the way I did it. And to a large extent, I'm sure that's true. I do think I don't think the White House is particularly free of corruption.
Right. Okay, I'm a university person and you're a media guy, and I've let you talk a bit about the media, but you said, if I have to talk about the media, do I get to talk about the universities?
Right.
What their role is. Do you think educational institutions like our universities, we have Catholic universities in this town, great community colleges, wonderful publicly funded universities. We're educating these people. We are a part of this community. Are we doing what we should be doing?
You wouldn't know this, but this past week I had conversations with the Chancellor, Mary Walshok of UCSD, and with Stephen Weber, the San Diego State University, suggesting that this was a marvelous time for something both of them have mentioned, that the universities and colleges of this region appoint an economist or a sociologist or somebody here and there to a little think tank, and they might all get together and say, can we be of any service to city government? Wouldn't that be a breakthrough? Because there's a lot of brains, there's a lot of savvy. And in the past, I've taken UCSD professors twice to Dick Murphy with information that I thought he could have used to great advantage. And in one case he canceled, in the other case he listened politely and made no comment, and it was over. I have assumed since then that he, like most politicians, they don't want outsiders looking over their shoulders. Consultants from the universities coming in and offering ways to do it better would be a threat to their jobs. So we'd have to force feed that if we make it work. But I think if the universities of San Diego jointly produced a white paper saying, it's too bad what's happened, here's some ways we're going to try to help and see if we can avoid doing this next time.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, if you think about higher education institutions across San Diego, from the border, Southwestern College, wonderful community college, San Diego State, in East County, Cal State San Marcos, UCSD, USD, Cal Western. Universities could be a setting for a lot of these community conversations you were talking about.
Not only that, but the students at these universities would be cheered to see the people of the community coming in saying, we want to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a nice scene. That'd be a great laboratory experiment.
And one that might even be credible.
I hope.
I want to shift gears a little bit.
You always do.
I know. We talked a little bit about the need for media attention, the potential for more intellectual and maybe analytical and thoughtful analysis of issues informing politicians. But I read the stuff you write, and you've talked about the cozy relationships, cozy deals between the business sector and politicians. So you said politicians don't like people meddling in their affairs. Well, maybe they just don't like academics meddling in their affairs.
Or reporters.
Or reporters. So is there, what do you mean when you talk about these cozy deals? Give me some examples from San Diego.
My favorite, I think maybe I can cough out a 60-second version of it. The rehab of the Naval Training Center. A gorgeous strip of harborfront, greenery, old buildings, everything setting up a little Balboa Park beside the bay. Everything was perfect. I now have tapes and documents showing exactly how Corky McMillan got the council to approve that really ridiculously sweetheart deal, and it allowed him to keep coming back for increased grants on things that he had already promised. I was in the hall with the council on the afternoon that he said, we will deliver all of this property in the olden part of the village there with the buildings rehabbed for the cultural arts. And I asked about that 3 times, and I have the tape, and he said, yes, that's what's happening. Of course, it didn't happen. Now, what happens in the following year? That event and all the things he promised to do as a major contractor on the largest public land deal in San Diego history went very well, and he made all of these promises. A year later, the contract is drawn up. It's an 813-page contract. I've talked to the city attorney several times at length, Casey Gwynn, the past one, and I've asked him to get me the young man who negotiated the contract, who said to me on tape, well, I had dinner every night for almost a year with these 2 or 3 big corporate attorneys. He said, it was really exhausting. And the idea that the city would let loose a plum like that and assure that the contractor was being taken care of by putting a junior assistant attorney against 3 corporate attorneys night after night for a year That's how it all happened.
I think there's another twist on this story, because a very prominent civic local citizen and volunteer and professional, a man by the name of Mickey Fredman, who chaired CCDC and many other organizations, chaired the Mayor's Advisory Committee on who the developer of NTC should be, and presented a unanimous recommendation, which was dead on arrival.
That's right.
I think that's what we call a cozy deal.
It was in Mayor Golding's administration, but it was fixed. Macmillan ran up and down the hall with 3 of his lobbyists that afternoon at City Council, in and out of toilets. I've never seen such a lobbying press. It was beautiful. He got his vote.
So are we surprised that 20-somethings aren't sure they want to vote for professional politicians?
No. And can we be surprised after something like watching that deal open up, can we be surprised that a couple of young councilmen would try to do the same thing? Of course not.
But now, we just described that mayors can be complicit in these cozy deals, but our citizens voted for a strong mayor system. Is that going to make a difference? Is that going to improve things?
The odds are, in all the studies around the cities, that it will help, because you'll at least know who to blame.
Okay. So you're saying whether it's Donna Fry or Jerry Sanders, they're going to be in a better position to be responsible or to be blamed?
I think whoever's elected mayor will be making decisions that have not been made by a mayor before without council approval.
Okay.
I think those will be made rather openly this time, as opposed to less so in the past. Yeah, hope so.
Hope so. Let's talk about our region. I mean, we've been talking very specifically about San Diego and the city, but our region is Fallbrook and Vista and San Marcos and San Isidro. We're a very geographically dispersed region. And we're also a highly diverse region, characterized by a lot of new businesses and new citizens. And one wonders sometimes, is it possible to govern a region like that? I mean, the city is the same way, but then you add the region, and I'm just, what do you think?
Well, let me point out that there are 17 cities, and 16 of them are better governed than San Diego.
Okay.
There is also the county of San Diego, which administers a huge, much larger area and a much larger budget. And the county of San Diego, which was about to go bankrupt 10 years ago, is now a AA1 bonded county, the highest you can get in a financial rating. They have offered to send some land-lease administrators over to the city if they want them, if they ever get started on reform, because they went through it 10 years ago. I tell people that this problem is not endemic to San Diego. Mike Davis might make a good case that it is, but it's not endemic. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be corrupt here. These things can happen, but the county is great. The city's lousy, so it's not just San Diego.
Let's stay with that, because you're right. I'm trying to think. I've lived here over 30 years now. Of a single, we haven't had any county board of supervisors convicted, right? That I know of. Have we? Have I missed something?
I turned to my mentor, Van.
Yes.
I don't know.
We have
I don't recall.
Politicians in the audience here.
Thank you. That's it. I don't remember one. The county has had a lot of scandals. They almost went bankrupt 10 years ago with very bad investments in the San Marcos landfill.
Yes, I remember that.
And their recovery from that is the best and closest lesson the city of San Diego can have.
I don't remember the nature of that recovery. I mean, can you share some of the details?
Oh, yes.
Was it professional staff? Was it the politicians? How did they get through all
They
that?
brought in an administrator, a young administrator named Larry Pryor, who is now a senior vice president of SAIC. He took the whole county structure apart, rebuild its temperament, its constitution, little things like, if you make a mistake and don't tell us, you're going to be fired. It's just a matter of when we find out or when it blows up. But if you make a mistake and don't report it, you're going to be fired. So everybody's trying to confess when they do something wrong down there. And that's a very basic schoolboy kind of thing, but it works.
Yeah.
But Pryor did this and rebuilt the whole county system, went off into the private sector after training Walter Eckerd, who is now the county chief administrative officer.
Well, why can't a city hire people like that?
Certainly could. San Diego certainly can hire people like that.
But what do you think have been the barriers? If the city keeps getting into problems, and deeper, as we're discovering in this moment in time, what might we have done in the past to prevent this?
Been open and on time with budgets, controlled expenditures, not made under the table side deals, not played footsie with every McMillan in town. It's all those things, just sort of what most people think of going to work and doing their job.
Yeah, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. That sounds too easy. Come on. We know that this has been going on, small time, big time now, small time in the past, for over 25 years. Does the city of San Diego get the politicians it deserves? I mean, the citizens keep voting for these people.
We've had some absolutely marvelous
Okay, who
politicians.
are they? Talk about them.
Well, Congressman Lionel Van Deerlin was one of the finest congressmen we ever had. Happens to be sitting in the front row as I speak.
That's right. But I was talking, Neil, we're focused tonight on the city, right, and the region. And I mean, there is this long history. I moved here a little over 30 years ago. And, every 2 or 3 years in the city, there's something. You're right, there was a crisis in the county a decade ago. But what is it about the city of San Diego that this keeps happening?
30 years ago, you will remember we had one of the greatest mayors in the history of the city, Pete Wilson, who was a far better mayor than later a governor, and should have stayed in the Senate. But that's all. He did all the things that San Diego needed doing that were very hard.
And he was a professional politician.
And he was a professional politician, but he did it. He was clean and honest. The closest he got to trouble, I think, was through dear Bob White, his administrative chief of staff, who I learned, and he has confessed to me, that the only reason that we got downtown redevelopment started in a terrible slum area, for those of you who didn't know San Diego all those years ago, was that Pete Wilson sent Bob White out to see Ernie Hahn and said, if you want to keep getting council approval for all of those rich subdivisions of homes that you're building, come on downtown and do us a favor and do some redevelopment downtown.
Sounds like a deal maker, but a public deal maker, not a cozy
isn't it nice
deal
when
maker.
the blackmail is on our side?
But Pete did go on to other office, and things tilted a lot, changed a lot. And I'm just curious what you think it was about this city or that time that have put us on this sort of long journey of ineffective government.
I think San Diego voters are notably undemanding, lazy, and often uninformed. A lot of that we take blame for in the media. I don't think the media has done the best job. Nobody is free of blame when you have a whole community that is deprived politically.
Well, you've suggested some of the ways in which that might change earlier in our conversation. The ways in which the web is making information accessible and many, many more voices accessible.
I think the community website is the hot story of the year in the media. They're spread all over the country. We happen to have a nonprofit one here with some very brilliant reporters. I love what they're doing. We're getting a huge response. Not much money, but we're getting a huge response. And I think beginning to have some influence.
Yes. I want to go back to Onward to Where. I've been asking you to talk about the past, to comment on the present, but as a city watcher for 54 years, and...
Me, not you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm close, but not quite. What would be your idea of America's finest city?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is get rid of those three words entirely.
Okay.
I think that's the most Bush slogan,
Bush League.
the most idiotic small-town hick slogan. I do not know why we love it so much. I wish we could have got rid of it before the terrorists struck.
Yeah.
Because they're having a lot of fun with that in the media all around.
Yeah.
So you see, we thought we were America's finest city. That's a part of an answer to a previous question.
Yeah.
We sat back, we had America's finest city.
We
were
arrived.
told it was perfect, so leave it alone. Don't fuss, you don't have to do anything.
Right. If not America's finest city, what would you like? This is your home. I mean, you have been an incredible force for good, for criticism, for anger at the city you love. And what are your greatest hopes for this city? Where do we need to arrive?
I think we have a good start in November, whichever one of these candidates makes it to mayor. If it's Donna, she's going to get worldwide publicity every time she shows up at the office. The media love her.
It's going to be our own Schwarzenegger.
Media absolutely love her. And she fits. She's a surfer lady in Surfer San Diego,
Right.
you know, so our image as America's finest city will be adapted a little bit, but that's all right. Sanders, I think, is solid and has that great woman chief of staff. One of them is sure to bring on Pat Shea, I hope, as the financial advisor for the great deficit and the pension fund mess. He having been through it, I suppose he could go to work for either one of them that he chose. But those two candidates will have some very smart people. I would like to know more of them before we go to the polls in November. But I think you begin with a strong mayor by having strong chiefs of staff and department heads and assistants. And you set your goal. And Lord, the field is rich for picking for goals for San Diego now. Nothing but up.
Right. But it may also be an opportunity to go back to our discussion about universities, to become more engaged and to pull themselves together and say, we're going to help our new mayor in this strong mayor system. It's also an opportunity for the media to say, this time we need to be more watchful. Are you hopeful or optimistic that might happen?
I think this has been enough of a terror that you will see a great many good, reform-minded things happening. I deeply hope so. If this doesn't do it, I don't know what can. This is a shock treatment. We know how to do it, and it begins with those decent, honest, open, elected people. And the second thing is we have to watch them all the time.
I think that's an optimistic conclusion of this conversation. And I want to thank you for the time and your insights on Onward to Where. It sounds like we might be moving in the right direction.
Let's
Thanks,
hope.
Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the fun begins.
I was wondering, do you think the city has hit rock bottom with the current scandals? And if not, where is rock bottom?
I agree with you. Where is it? If it's
How low can you go?
well, it hurts. It's rock. I know that. The fall is pitiful. I'm sure all of you get phone calls from your relatives and friends back east or Midwest or wherever they all saying, why, too bad, old San Diego, sweet old San Diego, that great climate, too bad. You're rotten to the core, all stuff like that. Walter Cronkite, who's a sailor, says very simply, you've got a shipwreck out there. You know, we all have our way of looking at it. No, I can't imagine that it's going to get any worse. But you see, we do have the problem. We don't have the new team in yet.
Right.
Keep in mind that we do not have the new team in yet. It will be November before we get a mayor in office and a new council elected. So try to hold on to your money and your patience, and we'll get some new folks in there.
Our government giving away our land to development, to me, is a crime. And the other comment that I'd like to hear you make has to do with the fact that it's my view that until we have a city council that is elected citywide instead of by district, we are just going to fight a battle to get our government online and in line. I'd like to hear your comment on both of those issues.
I agree with you completely that district elections have done us in. I hate to bring you the bad news that no major city who has gone to district elections has been able to reverse it politically. You can't get the votes. We now have 8 little mayors and a big mayor, and that's the city council.
Excuse me, could a citizens' initiative accomplish that?
That's a hell of a good question, Bob Mosher. I wonder.
I think that's why you have community forums, because these good ideas and good questions
I'd like to
surface.
work on it.
Let's do. I'll help you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Neil, I want to ask a question. I don't believe the pension crisis is really the problem. It's really a side effect of the problem. You mentioned a few minutes ago that San Diego voters are lazy and complacent, and even more than that, we're cheap. We want to get everything for free, and we wanted to do that since '78. How can we convince ourselves, as well as the new team, that we've got to pay for what we want and what we need in this city? And we haven't been doing that for many, many years. And the council has been borrowing money from other sources to plug holes temporarily, and the deficit keeps going up and the needs keep going up.
It is politically unfortunate to be known as a council person who is seeking to raise your taxes. It is just as bad as asking Congress to cut down on its campaign contribution regulations. Our system, if our system is corrupt, you're not going to get those things through because the people who are corrupt are in the way of their passage. I think that's what you're talking about here. I just think it's very hard to imagine a politician who will take on the role of being pro-tax in San Diego right now. And that is because, as you say, we're cheap. We always have, we have the obscenely lowest tax rate of any city in California. We're enjoying it, but it is part of our problem, too. Thank you, sir.
Please.
We were talking about a new mayor for San Diego, and you spoke eloquently about Donna Fry. I support her wholeheartedly. But tonight on the news, Steve Francis has joined Jerry Sanders, and the RNC is involved in what is not supposed to be a political election. It's supposed to be non-political or not non-partisan. And so we don't have a chance with Donna Fry with all of the RNC behind Jerry Saunders and Steve Francis.
Are you saying that because Donna is a Democrat and Sanders and Francis are Republicans?
Yes, because the RNC is behind it, and it's supposed to be nonpartisan, but it is not nonpartisan.
Well, if we can't beat the county Republican committee, we ought to get more town meetings together.
Absolutely. We better, I agree with you, but I'm very worried about what's going to happen now that we all get out and vote. My husband's lived in this area since 1927. He's seen a lot of things happen to this city, and all you have to do is look what happens with the business people downtown and the construction people wanting to run this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
A few months ago, the Council on Foundations met here in San Diego, and before that took place, I was a part of a meeting where people in this community listed the philanthropy that goes on in this community that's helped to build it, which is really astonishing compared to other places in the United States. And I don't think we can let a meeting like this go by without recognizing that some of the stuff that's going on in this city might have an effect on that. That's a comment. You may want to comment on that, and then later I have a question. You want to talk about that now, Neil? My question is that we somehow or other have avoided discussing the fact that we are an international city and a border community tonight, and I'd be very interested to hear what you had to say about that.
Very good comments. I have been passionate about that border for 30 years and should have been before that, but I think the opportunities of San Diego and Tijuana are so great. The economic thing is one thing, and that's working pretty well. What we don't know, we don't know them, they don't know us except as servants. We really have the only thing that makes San Diego unique, I mean, there are a lot of cities with harbors, a lot of cities on the sea. The only thing that makes us unique is that we are the largest border city in the United States. And we ignore it. It could be a huge asset. It is already a huge financial asset to us. It is embarrassing how much Mexican money is spent in San Diego. I'm sure embarrassing is the wrong word, but I mean, from a sensitive social point of view, they're holding us up. Excuse me, that's not the right phrase.
They're supporting us.
They're supporting us, thank you. Thank you, yeah.
You mentioned earlier tonight that the present city council and mayor had made corruptible decisions throughout their administration. I'm wondering, in your opinion, are any of these corruptible decisions making them culpable, perhaps prosecutable in court? And would that go back possibly to the McGrory, Golding, or perhaps even before that era, when you follow the trail of evidence regarding our corrupted pension program and the deficits that we have? I think the fact that Mrs. Azunza and Zucchett were recently found guilty, this is really small potatoes if you're talking about big-time corruption. And I was just wondering, in your opinion, are there grounds for prosecution for the current administration or going back, unless they're grandfathered through a statute of limitations, going back to the Golding McGrory era, who helped orchestrate the Charger sweetheart deal with the city council.
My guess is that the Golding McGrory years would be beyond the statute, and therefore not doable. But there, as far as the charge is concerned, the council that voted the ticket deal, you know, it may not be felonious, but it is so stupid that it deserves all of the public exposure it can get.
We hear a lot about the business power structure in downtown San Diego, but we never hear anything about the municipal employee labor unions as a power structure. Would you comment?
Well, I think the Municipal Employees Union is a powerhouse and has been a huge factor in the pension negotiations and everything else. I hate to see what I think I see coming, and that is a more open confrontation between labor and management and a more open confrontation between Democrats and Republicans, both of which would negate a lot of things that we're talking about here tonight. Yes, ma'am.
We keep hearing that there's such a structural problem as far as our finances are concerned, that we want more than we're willing to pay for, both on the city level, on the county level, on the state level. Only the federal government, they can make money, and so they don't have to face that problem as much as we do on the other levels. We've become a real urban city, but we're not really aware of it yet. We're still acting as if we're a bunch of suburban and we can just live peacefully and we can have all our needs provided and we don't have to pay for it.
May I take that opportunity to thank you for that profound question and answer?
Neil, thank you so much, and thank you, audience. You were terrific.
Thank all of you out there. Thanks.